Hello and welcome to the podcast. I'm Karen Weaver. Higher education institutions across the country are contending with significant headwinds. However, with a shared sense of purpose, a creative spirit, and sustained focus, Presbyterian College can emerge stronger than ever and build a tremendous foundation for the next 140 years. That was part of the inauguration speech that Matthew Vandenberg gave at Presbyterian College in Clinton, South Carolina in fall 2021. His vision for Presbyterian is slowly taking shape, but it has come with both highs and lows. Taking office in February 2021 in the middle of the pandemic, I wanted to ask Matt to take us behind the scenes of a first-time president with a terrific track record in both fundraising and friend-raising at his previous stops. Like so many presidents, he was confronted by challenges from the moment he walked on campus, and like so many times, athletics is a part of that. In our conversation, he walks us through a very delicate situation that emerged on campus in spring of 2022, when the Howard University women's lacrosse team arrived on campus and was verbally mistreated by a few members of the student population. It gravitated into a national story, and it was clearly a moment that many presidents face in putting espoused values into action. We talk about Presbyterian as a very small Division I campus with non-scholarship football, trying to manage success and expectations for athletes, coaches, and administrators in the fast-changing world of Division I sports. It's a great conversation for anyone who has ever thought about becoming a small college president. Matt, welcome to the podcast.
Karen, thanks for having me. I'm a big fan of your work and glad to participate in it.
So glad to have you. I know it's been a crazy couple of years, but you bring such passion and energy for higher education, and it's so evident in your role at Presbyterian. And so many folks worry about the future of small privates. What makes you bullish on Presbyterian and other small colleges like it?
Well, Karen, there's a lot of talk and guessing right now about what the future holds for higher education. There's no doubt that we face a lot of headwinds, rising costs, rampant inflation right now, price sensitivity by students and families, questions about the value of a college degree, demographic declines. We keep talking about the birth dearth. It's almost upon us. 2026 is right around the corner. And then just generally, rising competition, and liberal arts institutions, of course, have their own particular challenges. One of them that I think a lot about is our relatively small economies of scale. But I take heart for a number of reasons. One of them is, it's actually a Mark Twain quote, and I'll paraphrase it here, but reports of our death have been greatly exaggerated. So people have been, predicting the demise of liberal arts institutions since, the late 1880s. David Starr Jordan, who was the president of Stanford, is a pretty prominent example. He said that we were going to go the way of the dodo, but for, the most elite of us. And, I take heart for a number of reasons. One is that the U.S. simply needs more people to get post-secondary degrees to meet its workforce needs and to retain its global competitiveness. I take heart because the strength of America's higher education system is in its diversity. There's literally something for everybody, and each institution type has its place. And I think that's very much true for small private residential liberal arts colleges like PC. We're actually the right place for a lot of students, and probably more students than who currently realize it. And what we do, our brand of education, I think matters and it has value. So what we do focuses on, problem solving and making the world a better place. I think we focus on strengthening our democracy. So we don't just teach students what various disciplines say about a particular subject. We actually teach students to think like people from different disciplines and backgrounds. So we teach them empathy, and we help them to understand how to work with another person's perspective. And, in a society like ours that suffers from an acute deficit of civil discourse, I would argue that we need more classically trained liberal arts graduates running things and shaping opinions. And, the other thing is we're terrible as a society about understanding what the future of work holds. We don't know what the jobs are going to look like, 10 years from now, 5 years from now, even 3 or 4 years from now. And so we end up really focusing on producing graduates who are malleable and adaptable and valuable. So what we do matters and has value. And I think there will be liberal arts colleges that close, but the ones that do that are probably going to be the ones that focus on the two, kind of main response mechanisms that are super unhealthy. They either cut budgets to the bone on one hand, or they try to expand and stretch and be all things to all people, and then end up watering down their identity, leaving them less sure of who they even are in the first place. And so my focus at PC has been about really averting those response mechanisms, those challenges, and focusing on building, meaningful distinction. We're trying to answer the question: what can people get at PC that they can't get absolutely anywhere else? And how do we sort of marshal our resources to support those true distinctions so that they really shine? And we've been working diligently on that. We're about to launch our own market position related to problem solving and service and innovation. And I think it's that kind of thinking that's going to help our small private colleges to thrive. But we are actually programmed to be able to, adapt and strike quickly when we see an opportunity, maybe more so than some other institutions that are public and have to, work with big bureaucracies whenever they want to do something.
So just so our listeners can picture Presbyterian College and the campus in their mind, give us a sense of, if we were walking on campus, what would we see?
Yeah, I mean, beautiful Southern architecture. We have a kind of a narrow campus, but it's a couple miles long, and it's absolutely breathtaking in the mornings. It just feels, you almost get this sort of spiritual sense about the place. But we're in a town of about 8,000 or 9,000 people. We have about 1,000 students ourselves, both graduate and undergraduate. And we've carved out a little bit of a niche for ourselves in health-related graduate programs. So we're a classic small private residential liberal arts institution situated in rural America with all the charm and wonderful things that come with that. But we've really focused on health-related careers and how that marries with a classic liberal arts training.
So essential in this day and age coming out of COVID, hopefully, and also just the importance of a good healthcare system that we all know we need. I find that inspiring. So you mentioned about 1,000 students. Is that graduate and undergraduate?
Correct. Yeah.
So I would imagine that athletics plays a crucial role in the recruitment and retention, alumni relations, and other areas of the campus experience. So if you have about 1,000 students on campus and you play, as for those who don't know, Division I sports, explain to us how this fits into your strategies with peer and aspirant institutions.
Yeah, I tend to focus less on who our peers are, who our competitors are, and I try to focus on making them irrelevant.
Okay.
And so, we have a little bit of a different way of thinking about this, but you're right. I mean, you point to an interesting set of circumstances, an interesting dynamic, which is that we're pretty small, and yet we're Division I. The Division I decision was made back before my arrival in the early 2000s. I suspect it was likely hastened by similar moves from Wofford and others near us who we did deem at that time to really be our competitors. And, I wasn't there for the discussions back then, but I suspect that the decision to go D1 really stemmed from a desire to enhance PC's stature and its national visibility. All things being equal, we're relatively early in that experiment. So we're just wrapping up our second decade of being a Division I institution. So although I think we've seen some pros and some cons, we'd be kind of hard pressed to simply change strategies at this point because we were feeling one way or another. Division I status certainly comes with some pros and some cons, but our strategy is to try and make the most of our status. So we've enjoyed some superlatives. So for example, we launched the first Division I women's wrestling program in the United States.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
And we gained some notoriety for that. I found myself kind of working with the National Wrestling Coaches Association, trying to encourage other institutions to follow suit. We're looking for other ways to kind of construct creative exhibitions that will be, kind of big visibility plays for PC and for the other institution. Corporate sponsorships and ticket sales tend to be more lucrative in Division I than maybe I've seen at, in my own history with Division III institutions. And then we've tried to do some unique and interesting things. So one example that comes to mind is, we hired as our football coach, Kevin Kelly, who doesn't tend to punt and who tends to, onside kick it and go for 2 points after touchdowns quite frequently. And, that ended up generating, we estimate, hundreds of thousands of dollars in media exposure and visibility. Now, he didn't end up remaining here, but that is an example, I think, of the kind of big thinking that can help an institution like PC make the most of its Division I status.
It's a great point. And you mentioned to me earlier before we got on the podcast about the kinds of conversations you have with your athletic staff about big fish and a small fish in a very big pond. So talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's a complex environment right now, with all the discussion in the NCAA around reorganization. Places like PC, I suspect other places are all kind of going, where do I fit in the landscape? And my advice to our athletic staff, whether or not we're facing this this uncertainty, this complexity, my advice to our athletic staff is similar to what they tell our student athletes in game and practice situations. Work on the things that are within your control. Don't spend time lamenting what could be or what might be, because those things might not even come to pass in the first place. Focus on becoming the best version of yourself and put in the hard work that'll get you where you want to go. And, I think the president has a big role in propelling athletics. So philanthropy is a big thing. We just did an $8 million facilities fundraising upgrade, or we just did the fundraising project for that upgrade. Working on the endowment is another big thing. Working on making sure that we have the right enrollment balances in every single athletic program so that we're maximizing our revenue and sort of reducing the pressure that we feel on the budget with Division I athletics. I find myself getting involved pretty regularly with recruitment efforts. So I meet with a lot of students and families directly. That's a big distinction PC would offer relative to, that's probably not happening at Georgia Tech, just as an example. So there are a lot of things that we can do like that, like driving corporate partnerships and ticket sales, and really just working on, reputational pieces that we can do to make the most of Division I. But it all comes down to work on the things that are within the realm of your control.
Right. Good advice for so many of us. This spring, you had a really difficult situation happen on campus involving the Howard University women's lacrosse team's visit to your campus to play a game. Walk us through what happened and what the process was for making some very difficult decisions and the outcome.
Yeah, sure. Well, in February, we had a group of students gather on a hillside outside of our stadium about an hour before the women's lacrosse game. And what we ended up learning was that they hurled racist and some of them hurled racist and misogynistic insults at the visiting players from Howard University's lacrosse team. And I mean, this was a devastating thing to have happen. Obviously, for our friends from Howard University and all of their families, devastating for them, but devastating for our community. I mean, I can't tell you how many students, faculty, and staff and alumni reached out to me to express outrage over what happened and to say that you know that this doesn't represent PC, and it doesn't represent PC. But what we have to come to terms with is that it happened at PC, and so there was something in our environment that enabled that to happen. And so that's a tough truth, but that's something that we had to grapple with. And so a lot of institutions in circumstances like this, the reflex will be to try to compress everything and to try to sweep it under the rug and ride out the storm. And we did not want that to be the way that we handled this. We brought in an outside investigator to try and bring up the truth and try to bring all the tough stuff to the surface. And then we said, we're going to deal very harshly with and hold those to account, anyone who had responsibility for what took place. And ultimately, we did not want this incident to be what defines us. I believe firmly that it's not an institution's ability to avoid difficulty or dodge hardship that is the measure of the place. The measure of the place is best taken in how it responds to things like that. So we didn't want to be known as the place where this bad thing happened. We wanted to be known as the place that was willing and brave enough and committed enough to deal with that kind of incident happening. And hopefully history will show that that's what we did.
So I guess give us a sense. You sent a letter out to the community. I think it was just the campus community, but it got picked up by some of the media outlets and things like that. Tell us about the contents of that letter and then also what the response was from the community.
Yeah, I mean, I think on both sides of this. So we released a statement, on the front end, on the back end, and a couple of times during, the process, just as an update. And really, what we were trying to do is, in very unequivocal language, condemn racism and misogynism and hatred, all forms thereof, and make it clear that we were not going to conflate strong expressions of belief in doing the right thing with actually doing the right thing. So we said what we thought was important to say. We led with our values, and then we talked about the process that we were going to use. We brought in somebody independent of PC so that there wasn't, hopefully even the appearance that we were trying to sweep anything under the rug, and then we dealt forcefully with it. And so then on the other end of this, we essentially repeated that. We said, we condemn all forms of racism, misogyny, and hatred, but we don't confuse heartfelt sentiments with action and actual accountability. And so we showed, obviously FERPA kind of prevents you from disclosing all the details. But we tried to give the sense that there were different levels of activity by students, different levels of involvement, and we dealt with each of those separately and independently. And by the way, we also found that a heck of a lot of students and faculty and staff tried to do the right thing in the course of those events, and so we also tried to make that known as well.
I also recall reading that a couple of students got kicked out, and you just said, we don't want you back to campus anymore. So I think even that makes a pretty bold statement about we're going to really reinforce our values. And if you can't live up to the values that we set, then maybe you're not a good fit here.
That's right.
Yeah. I do have to ask you, because I'm a former coach. So I have to ask, how did your team respond, your lacrosse team respond when this first happened? And perhaps you heard about what happened at Delaware State women's lacrosse when they came up 95 and were stopped. I think it was in Georgia. And their bus was searched, and they thought it was racial profiling, but we don't know that that's true. But it affects you. When things like that happen, it's hard to feel good about it on either side, whether you're the team that's being attacked, as Howard was, or your team could be standing there feeling almost helpless. How did they respond?
I both watched from afar, and I had an opportunity to address the team relatively soon after those events transpired. And my general sense is that they were aghast and embarrassed. I also think that they felt sort of personally responsible, because some of the people on that hillside were there to support them, and were friends that they had done a great job at getting people to come to the game and be supportive. I don't think that they knew that was going to happen, but we're a small, tight-knit community, and so when someone does that, you tend to know who they are.
Yeah.
And so that adds a dimension of pain and personalizes it in a way that might not necessarily be the case than if it happened at a big place where you don't know everybody the same way. So I think it was I think it was an opportunity for them to sort of I imagine they were scrutinizing themselves, their own connections, who they associate with, and all of that. They were asking the tough questions that that the institution was asking, and I'm sure that they'll be even stronger human beings because of that. But that team is filled with a lot of terrific people, and I know that this is not what they wanted for their friends from Howard University. Yeah. And they were part of the charge led by our students. Our students put on a unity march on campus to express support for women and athletes of color. And some of those members of the lacrosse team at PC were some of the most prominent members in that march.
That's great. That's great. I can relate to this because early in my coaching career, we traveled to a small school in Virginia and arrived there clearly with a bunch of young men who'd been drinking most of the afternoon, and they proceeded to yell every misogynistic word they possibly could at us, thinking in their minds that they were supporting the home team. And it was very frustrating to have to listen to that. And that's one of the values of having a neutral administrator on site to try to patrol the crowd, because the coaches can't do it, the officials can't do it, the teams are playing, so somebody's got to be there. So just an important tidbit for presidents to pay attention to. That's why you have an administrator on site. Matt, I know that you are an exceptional fundraiser, and I know you are a policy wonk. So how do you use those skill sets to drive the agenda for the next few years at Presbyterian?
Well, thanks for that compliment. I'm going to keep you on speed dial whenever I get a boost. But no, thank you. I think my orientation toward the role is heavily influenced by my advancement background. I think good advancement officers tend to be optimists. They tend to understand that big ideas and a clear vision tend to galvanize their base and attract transformative gifts and encourage students to attend the institution. Advancement officers tend to, the really good ones, they tend to prioritize listening and serving over selling and talking. And so I purposefully try to do a lot of listening and serving as opposed to just selling and talking. Advancement people tend to kind of gravitate towards symbiosis, and they have kind of just an intrinsic knack for building partnerships. They see an opportunity for mutual benefit in a lot of relationships. And they tend to, just realize that effective partnerships are a lot greater than just the sum of their parts. And I remember talking to the presidential search committee about why they chose me, so that you know to do more of those things, and to really let those qualities shine. And what they said to me was, look, the conviction that you had that we would rally from some of these difficulties and prevail was attractive. I think very much a result of my background. They said the kind of bold, partnership-oriented, big idea-fueled brand of adaptation that I was preaching seemed like what they needed. And then, honestly, if you have a background in policy and a background in advancement like I do, you tend to understand the importance of diplomacy. And I found that actually the presidency of a college is probably 80 or 90% diplomacy.
Yeah.
And problem solving and partnership development. But I'd really, I'd kind of focus the job down to diplomacy, problem solving, and partnership development. And those are certainly skills that, a degree in public policy, a stint on Capitol Hill, time in politics, working in the nonprofit sector, and trying to, fight the challenges and create create a great situation out of difficult circumstances. Those are all things that I've been fortunate enough to have a lot of experience in, and they tend to be a very strong lens for me in my role as president of PC.
You're one of the emerging group of young presidents that's coming up through the higher education landscape. If we have a listener who's thinking about, do I want to be a college president? Can you give them some encouragement?
Oh, absolutely. It's a challenging job, but I've actually wanted this job since I was 20 years old.
Wow.
It's funny. A lot of people will, one of my mentors at Alma College is fond of saying I'm an English professor by trade and a college professor or a college president by accident. And that's usually good for a laugh, but it does show that a lot of people come to the presidency because of just career evolution. I actually had somebody, kind of put their arm around me at the age of 20 and say, I think this could be you. And I found myself, looking for opportunities to do that in some of our students. I had a conversation like that yesterday, actually. We are on the front lines of helping people at some of their most formative and vulnerable years. And our society faces some major deficits that are answered through good, well-delivered, well-timed, carefully orchestrated higher education experiences.
Yeah.
And it is a great privilege to be able to lead an institution that has such an impact, a positive impact on the lives of young people. And so although the job is filled with a lot of challenges, when something goes right, when you get a big gift, when you see a class come in, when you see graduation and experience it, there's nothing like it. And you look for those moments to really affirm that you've made the right vocational decision for your own career.
Matt, that's tremendous. I can't thank you enough. We've been trying to get this podcast together now for more than a few months, and we finally got it. But I think that the folks who listen to this podcast, especially my students at Penn, will get a lot out of this. And I'm hoping we will find a few more presidents in the mix as well. So thank you for that.
Karen, thank you. I'm a big fan of yours and enjoyed studying under you at Penn. And I'm, just really excited for the work that you're doing and grateful for a chance to participate in one of these great podcasts.
Thanks, Matt.